Chapter 23. A Recipe for Mock Turtle Soup. Alice, 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 Yorkin ingeminated, tugging on her pinafore. What? Huh? I'm sorry. Where were we? She replied, jerking back into the present, the open and lightly wooded acreage between the manor and the stables, the well-beaten trail separating a fenced-in field from the banks of the river. Where do you go when that happens? He asked, as they walked beside one another. I don't know. Perhaps it's better said that I don't know until I get there. But once I arrive, it's sometimes difficult to get back. I've seen you do it a few times. What do you think about while you're gone? He queried additionally, taking a swing at a rock with a stick he found. All manner of things, really, although I wouldn't call it thinking so much as impossibly supposing, she responded, patting Dinah's back while she repositioned in her arms. Suppose, for example, that tree tells us it's a lovely day for a stroll, same as those flowers invite us to sing and shake our petals. We could say, "It is, Mr. Tree, and let's hope it's even lovelier tomorrow," and "Why, thank you, ladies. What fun it would be to tap our roots to the rhythm and sway on our stems to the rhymes." A question for you, my lad. What do you think it's like to be a horse? Well, I don't know. I've never considered asking one, Yorkin told, whapping his stick along the fence posts. And why not? Because animals don't talk, he delivered self-evidently. Do they not? Are you sure? I think an animal could have plenty to say if you were patient, listened, and asked as many questions as you. Give it a whirl, Dinah. See what she's got to say. So, Dinah, do you like being a cat? He complied, scratching the underside of her chin. She meowed and purred, seemingly melting into his touch. He giggled, and Alice pointed out, See that? She's a regular jabberjaw, and super chuffed with the attention. She shared a kiss on the nose with her feline, and let her scale up her torso to rest on her shoulder. When she settled, the boy was redirected to the goings-on inside the fence. Now, take those horses there. If you were to speak with them, what do you suppose they'd say? Probably that my sisters are much heavier than they look, and what great fun it would be to dump them on their blubbery backsides, he figured frankly. You may very well be right, but let's try something else, Alice chuckled. Imagine that you switched places, and it's your sisters that are trotting around on all fours and eating hay while the horses are in the saddles. Do you see it? I do, he crowed, joining in with joyous laughter. Good. Let's do it again, and this time with the creation of our own. Start simple. We'll use, a turtle, the boy shouted his suggestion. A turtle, sure, very good. But it's not a turtle, not actually, he guided moreover. Okay then, it's a turtle half-wise, and the other is confused. We'll say it has flippers, but hooves for hind parts. A body and shell, certainly, but a tail and head of a bull. But he wants to be a real turtle, Yorkin assembled. He dreams of being included in a school, like all the other fishes, where he'll learn reading and writing. You mean reeling and writhing, he corrected, wearing a witty smile. Geography, she tried again. That's seaography, he aquaticized. And there's the types of rhythmatics, like ambition, distraction, uglification, and derision. But that's his least favorite subject. What about drawing and sketching, or painting in oils? She asked, catching the pattern. Drawing, stretching, and fainting in coils. Well, we can't forget about history, she attempted next, anticipating his stumble. To a excuse me. To a turtle, it's a mystery. He served with ease. Why, you're as mad as a hatter, aren't you? Alice posed with teasing laughter. No madder than you, who's a March hare, Yorkin countered with a dose of the same. The duo's mindless jesting was cut short whilst approaching the unlatched gateway to the field. It was violently swung open by their equestrian siblings, bursting through and sundering the children from the building, a stone's throw up the path. What is that flea-ridden thing doing so close to the stables? Delphine demanded, yanking on her reins. She doesn't have fleas, and we're just out for a walk. She means no harm to you, Alice upheld. Mother may have given your pet free rein, but I've warned you once already. If I catch it rooting around where it isn't welcome, I will personally tie it in a sack and toss it in the river. Dinah hissed, taking resentment to the remark. And as her ears lay flat and her canines were bared, Nicolette intervened to dilute the threat. Never mind that, Delphine. What nonsense are you filling the boy's head with today, Alice? Nothing, we're just make-believing, Yorkin responded instead. A turtle, with a bull's head, horns, and everything. She didn't come up with that herself. That's a recipe for mock turtle soup. The turtles typically used have been eaten into extinction, so we substitute them with beef parts. I'm sorry, Alice. Am I boring you? No. I'm sorry. I just have the feeling we're being watched, she replied vacantly, fixated on the structure over yonder. What? Where? I don't see anything, Delphine reported obnoxiously, erratically surveying the area. Maybe it's her mock turtle up and faffing about, her elder sister chaffed. Not at all. If you must know, I thought I saw a white rabbit with a monocle, wearing a jacket, a vest, and a polka-dotted bow tie. Alice refuted the snide comment, trailing off into her scouting. Poppycock, she cackled at the absurdity, in the nick of time before the other horses cooped in the stables were spooked and agitated by the unfamiliar. I'll check it out, Yorkin ventured. No, allow me, little brother, Delphine relegated, steering her steed toward the disturbance. The animals were restless, but quieting, as she casually moved inside. Walking from one end to the other, she peered over the walls of each pen, scanning the entirety around the irked occupants. The building was empty. Those that were expected to be there were elsewhere, and anyone hiding seemed to have vacated with no impression. Parking her horse near the back door, which was also left wide open, she hopped down and affirmed for the group, No polka-dotted rabbits in here. For Alice, her words brought on a sudden migraine, striking her down with a terrible and crippling pain. Her senses veered out of control. Vision pulsed to the drum of an escalating heartbeat, while hearing was a deafening ring, a tick of a clock, light and constant. Alice, are you all right? Yorkin braced her from underneath with all of his strength, dropping his stick to catch her and Dinah as she weakened and collapsed. Yes, I'm fine, she winced, squeezing her temples as her symptoms lessened and stabilized. Oblivious to her ailment, Delphine advanced her sweep on foot. There were no tracks to follow, no sign to suggest or direct her. It was a gut instinct, the leave no rock unturned mentality that took her to where the family coach was stored. She investigated the undercarriage, again finding nothing that shouldn't be, just air and gravel. Nothing here either, she hollered as she rose. Because her head was turned, however, she missed the white blotch darting out from some part of the wagon. It took off like a bullet, bounding around the backside of the stables and through the gap between the boards and the fence. Dinah was the first of the group to spot it, leaping from Yorkin's arms, marking him with incidental scratches in pursuit. Alice went after her, and the boy after Alice. Delphine brought up the rear once she realized she was being left in the dust, which meant Nicolette was stuck with the abhorrent chore of caring for the horses. The Milky Flash and the feline were already a fair bit of the way across the field by the time the children jumped the fence, but Alice was determined not to lose them. She reached the wood line, hearing the merriment of the siblings chasing her. But the deeper in she hiked, the more those noises faded, and this game of tag she started with bent the rules. Soon there wasn't anyone behind her. It was as if this pleasant thicket they were weaving through had gotten heavier, faster, darker. It had closed in on them, swallowed them completely. Dinah was missing too. Alice lost sight of her during a struggle with foliage. But there was a meow that reverberated in one direction, the same as it did in every. A meow to say she was still there. A meow that dropped Alice to her knees. Her pain returned, triggered by the cat's call, and it wasn't so fleeting. Retreating to the ground with her shaking palms to her head, she cried and beseeched to be exonerated from the infernal ticking drilling into her sanity. Even with her eyes shut tightly and saturated with tears, she detected the fabric of her world pulsing and contorting again. At its worst and most acute, the pain drove her to let out a primal scream, an exorcism of the torment and madness. The sound waves of this shout enacted a bout of pyrokinesis on the forest, lighting, burning, and extinguishing it as quickly as flash paper. Despite the destructive nature of her tantrum, it medicated Alice. It soothed and sedated her. She reinstalled, with restored silence in her mind. A streak of blood ran from her nose to lips. She wiped it, realizing that whatever was happening to her, the headache was stronger this time. It pushed her further, damaged her, and she wanted to go home. But there was no helping the poor girl. Nothing there for her except the scorched black trees and lifeless waste. Before her was a mound of raised earth, slightly tilted to manifest an entry or exit point for a small mammal, easily surmised to be a rabbit hole. "Dinah, here, kitty, kitty, where are you?" The response Alice was awaiting wasn't what arrived, though. A precipitous, bestial rustling rolled from her rear left and traveled up the side. "Alice, follow the rabbit, follow the trail, find him," an amalgamation of children's whispers said, the motion dying in front of her. "Delphine, Yorkin, Nicolette, you can come out now. This isn't funny anymore," she called out, understandably more tense. The same susurration banged, this time from the right. "Down the hole. Alice, they're coming. Save us," these voices prompted, as they too dissipated. Or was it again? Alice had difficulties discerning which. She felt an inexorable urge to turn around and scope a route to safety. She listened and was supremely startled by 3 figures impeding her. 3 humanoid rabbits, wretchedly disheveled, bordering on rabid. Each was dressed in the corresponding outfit of her siblings. "Follow the rabbit," down the hole, save us," they repeated in unison, almost a chant, in their gently twisting octaves as they walked. One step for her was matched by one in approach for the three. The one farthest to the left, dressed in Yorkin's attire, produced a long knife, which looked like it came straight out of the little kitchen. Alice assumed the rabbit meant to do her harm, but instead turned the blade on itself and ran it across its throat. While its head detached and slid off its shoulders, the utensil was passed on to the next to continue the ritualistic act. The middle rabbit's wasn't decapitated cleanly, gripping its ears and tugging on the bits of fur and skin that still connected it to the base of its neck. The third's was successfully severed, just as the first, but it decided to catch its head and bring it along as it lurched forward. The trio's blood-soaked and shambling bodies reached for her, nearly backing Alice against the mound. She mentally prepared to be groped, dismembered, and whatever further malice they intended she endure, but it never came to that. A simple blink, it seemed, gave her the power to send these crazed rodents away, make the knife and their mutilations disappear. With them gone, she was free to try retracing her path home to the manor, where she guessed Dinah must be waiting by now. But as I'm sure most of us have learned, it's not often we get to escape our nightmares after the first encounter with horror. All too commonly, the ending of one just breeds another, because it doesn't want to relinquish its grip on us. That's why I believe when we wake as children, we're so afraid and untrusting in the safety of sleep. And Alice's nightmare wasn't finished with her yet. Something down the rabbit hole hadn't bid her good night. The mound spat out spider leg-like tendrils to stop her, tangling around her ankles and tripping her into a prone position. Courageously she writhed and kicked, crawling her way out of their grasp. Fighting only served to forfeit her leverage as they coiled around her waist and down her torso. Having her elevated, levitating through the air, left her arms with little to do, but still she rebelliously scratched and clawed as they reeled her in. Clumps of dirt clung to her nails as the abductors ripped her off the opening's walls. Alice's screams went unheard, muffled by the pedipalp around her mouth, constricting while they dragged her through a tunnel of damp soil and a nest of cold roots. Suspended in darkness, the faint light of day remained visible, but unequivocally unreachable. A shiver tickled her spine, noticing her bondage begin to wiggle and move, converting from the simple mass of a branch or trunk to multiple smaller, independently flexible digits. They were fingers. It was now a hand covering Alice's mouth, and a giant pair of pupilless yellow eyes glaring over her shoulder. The creature that rasped forward was the ghoulish husk of what used to be a brown hare. Bits of bone and other skeletal portions were showing, most being clothed with its musculature, its tendons and tissues, and the like. The skin and fur were a mismatched fusion of moss, leaves, bark, twigs, and other natural replacements. Through chattering incisors, it commanded Alice in a loud, crackling, and demonic voice, "Find the rabbit," before releasing her, sending her free-falling down the bottomless shaft. You know what, guys? I'm going to wrap this episode here. I know I said that I was going to try to fit both chapters into one video, but I really kind of want to give this chapter and the final chapter a chance to really stand out on their own. because they are very, very important chapters to pay attention to. So I really want to give them a chance to stand out and sink in. Alternatively, I also kind of would like to do a little bit of an outro as we wrap up this book at the end of the next episode, just to kind of, like I said, wrap things up and let you know kind of where we're going next, what you can expect in the next book that we are going to be reading through. And I just want to make sure that I give myself enough time to kind of get out everything that I want to say, so we can move on to the next thing. With that being said, though, guys, I bid you adieu, and I will look forward to seeing you in the finale episode. See you later.